Reading through the Bible in 1 year, July 6th, Joshua chapter 8, Psalm 139, Jeremiah chapter 2, and Matthew 16. Now Yahweh said to Joshua, "Do not fear or be dismayed. Take all the people of war with you and arise, go up to Ai. See, I have given into your hand the king of Ai, his people, his city, and his land. So you shall do to Ai and its king just as you did to Jericho and its king. You shall take only its spoil and its cattle as plunder for yourselves. Set an ambush for the city behind it." So Joshua rose with all the people of war to go up to Ai. And Joshua chose 30,000 men, valiant warriors, and set them out at night. He commanded them, saying, "See, you are going to ambush the city from behind it. Do not go very far from the city, but all of you be ready. Then I, and all the people who are with me, will come near the city, and it will be when they come out to meet us as at the first, we will flee before them. And they will come out after us until we have drawn them away from the city, for they will say, 'They're fleeing from us just as at the first.' So we will flee before them. And you shall rise from your ambush and take possession of the city, for Yahweh your God has given it into your hand. Then it will be that when you have seized the city, that you shall set the city on fire. You shall do to it according to the word of Yahweh. See, I have commanded you." So Joshua sent them away, and they went to the place of ambush, and remained between Bethel and Ai, on the west side of Ai. But Joshua spent that night among the people. Now Joshua rose early in the morning and mustered the people, and went up with the elders of Israel before the people of Ai. Then all the people of war who were with him went up and drew near, and arrived in front of the city and camped on the north side of Ai. Now there was a valley between him and Ai. And he took about 5,000 men and set them in ambush between Bethel and Ai on the west side of the city. So they set the people and all the army that was on the north side of the city, and its rear guard on the west side of the city. And Joshua went that night into the midst of the valley. Now it happened that when the king of Ai saw it, the men of the city hurried and rose up early and went out to meet Israel in battle, and he and all his people at the appointed place before the desert plain. But he did not know that there was an ambush against him behind the city. And Joshua and all Israel pretended to be beaten before them, and fled by the way of the wilderness. And all the people who were in the city were gathered together to pursue them, and they pursued Joshua, and were drawn away from the city. So not a man remained in Ai or Bethel, who had not gone out after Israel. So they forsook the city, leaving it open, and pursued Israel. Then Yahweh said to Joshua, "Stretch out your javelin that is in your hand toward Ai, for I will give it into your hand." So Joshua stretched out the javelin that was in his hand toward the city. And the men in ambush rose quickly from their place, and when he had stretched out his hand, they ran and entered the city and captured it, and they quickly set the city on fire. Then the men of Ai turned back and looked, and behold, the smoke of the city ascended to the sky. They had no place to flee this way or that, for the people who had been fleeing to the wilderness turned against the pursuers. But Joshua and Israel saw that the men in ambush had captured the city, and that the smoke of the city ascended. So they turned back and struck down the men of Ai. And the others came out of the city to meet them, so that they were trapped in the midst of Israel, some on this side and some on that side. And they struck them down until there was no one remaining for him who survived or escaped. But they seized the king of Ai alive and brought him to Joshua. Now it happened that when Israel had finished killing all the inhabitants of Ai in the field and in the wilderness where they pursued them, and all of them fell by the edge of the sword until they were completely destroyed, then all Israel turned back to Ai and struck it with the edge of the sword. So all who fell that day, both men and women, were 12,000, all the people of Ai. For Joshua did not withdraw his hand with which he stretched out the javelin until he had devoted to destruction all the inhabitants of Ai. Israel took only the cattle and the spoil of that city as plunder for themselves, according to the word of Yahweh, which he had commanded Joshua. So Joshua burned Ai and made it a heap forever, a desolation until this day. And he hanged the king of Ai on a tree until evening, and at sunset Joshua gave a command, and they took his body down from the tree and threw it at the entrance of that city gate, and raised over it a great heap of stones that stands to this day. Then Joshua built an altar to Yahweh, the God of Israel, on Mount Ebal, just as Moses, the servant of Yahweh, had commanded the sons of Israel, as it is written in the book of the law of Moses, an altar of uncut stones, on which no man had wielded an iron tool. And they offered burnt offerings on it to Yahweh, and sacrificed peace offerings. And he wrote there on the stones a copy of the law of Moses, which he had written, in the presence of the sons of Israel. And all Israel, with their elders and officers and judges, were standing on both sides of the ark before the Levitical priests who carried the ark of the covenant of Yahweh, the sojourner as well as the native. Half of them stood in front of Mount Gerizim, and half of them in front of Mount Ebal, just as Moses, the servant of Yahweh, had given a command at first to bless the people of Israel. Remember this, we talked about it in Deuteronomy chapter 11. Then, afterward, he read all the words of the law, the blessing and the curse, according to all that is written in the book of the law. There was not a word of all that Moses had commanded, which Joshua did not read before the assembly of Israel, and the women and the little ones, and the sojourners who were going among them. Bringing up the map here for you so you can see where that had taken place. And now let's move on to Psalm 139. O Yahweh, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You understand my thought from afar. You scrutinize my path and my lying down, and are intimately acquainted with all my ways. Even before there is a word on my tongue, behold, O Yahweh, you know it all. You have enclosed me behind and before, and you have put your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is too high. I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, the place of the dead, behold, you are there. If I lift up the wings of the dawn, if I dwell in the remotest part of the sea, even there your hand will lead me, and your right hand will lay hold of me. If I say, surely the darkness will bruise me, and the light around me will be as night, even the darkness is not too dark for you. Even the night is as bright as the day. Darkness and light are alike to you. For you formed my inward parts. You wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret, and intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes have seen my unshaped substance, and in your book all of them were written, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was not one of them. How precious are your thoughts to me, O God! How vast is the sum of them! If I should count them, they would outnumber the sand. When I awake, I am still with you. Oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God. O men of bloodshed, depart from me. For they speak against you wickedly, and your enemies take your name in vain. Did I not hate those who hate you, O Yahweh? And I do not revile, and do I not revile those who rise up against you? I hate them with the utmost hatred. They have become my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxious thoughts, and see if there be any hurtful way in me, and lead me in the everlasting way. Now, Jeremiah chapter 2. Now, the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, Go, call out in the ears of Jerusalem, saying, Thus says Yahweh. And that's the statement of a prophet. Anytime a prophet comes out and says, This is what Yahweh says, this is what the God of Israel has spoken, you had better, as we read in Deuteronomy, stop and pay attention. The test of a prophet is whatever he says, if it doesn't come true, well, then he's lying in the face of Yahweh. He's lying for Yahweh, saying that Yahweh said to do something, or he was commanding something from the people. And if that thing doesn't come true, then he is a liar and making a mockery of the God of Israel. So what should be done about that man? To be stoned to death. Don't even touch them. That's how they are to die. Because this is an important thing. They're speaking in the place of God. So when Jeremiah here steps up and says, Thus says Yahweh, as the Lord has commanded, he knows full well the weight that is going to bear on him. Continuing with the command of God, God is now telling him, saying, Thus says Yahweh, I remember concerning you in the loving kindness of your youth, the love of your betrothals, your walking after me in the wilderness, through a land not sown. Israel was holy, set apart for purpose to Yahweh. The first of his produce. All who ate of it became guilty. Evil came upon them, declares Yahweh. Hear the word of Yahweh, O house of Jacob, and all the families of the house of Israel. Thus says Yahweh, What injustice did your fathers find in me, that they went far from me, and walked after a vanity, and became vain? They did not say, Where is Yahweh, who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, who led us through the wilderness, through a land of deserts and of pits, through a land of drought and the shadow of death, through a land that no one crossed, and where no man inhabited. I brought you into the fruitful land to eat its fruit and its good things. But you came and defiled my land, and my inheritance you made an abomination. The priests did not say, Where is Yahweh? And those who handle the law did not know me. The shepherds also transgressed against me, and the prophets prophesied by Baal, and walked after things that did not profit. Therefore, I will yet contend with you, declares Yahweh, and your sons' sons I will contend. With your sons' sons I will contend. For cross to the coastlands of Kittim and see. Send to Kedar and perceive closely and see if if there has been such a thing as this. Has a nation changed gods, though they were not gods? But my people have changed their glory for that which does not profit. Be appalled, O heavens, at this, and be horribly afraid, be very devastated, declares Yahweh. For my people have done two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, to hew for themselves cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water. Is Israel a slave? Or is he a homeborn slave? Why has he become plunder? The young lions have roared at him. They have given forth their voice, and they have made his land a desolation. His cities have been turned into ruin, without an inhabitant. Also, the men of Memphis and Tahpanhes, have shaved the top of your head. Have you not done this to yourself by forsaking Yahweh your God when he led you in the way? But now what are you doing on the road to Egypt to drink the waters of the Nile? The people were heading back to Egypt. Or what are you doing on the road to Assyria to drink the waters of the river? Your own evil will chastise you, and your own acts of faithlessness will reprove you. Know therefore and see that it is evil and bitter for you to forsake Yahweh your God, and the dread of me is not in you, declares Lord Yahweh of hosts. For long ago I broke your yoke and tore off your bonds, but you said, I will not serve. For on every high hill and under every green tree you have lain down as a harlot. Yet I planted you as a choice vine, a completely true seed. How then have you turned yourself before me into the degenerate shoots of a foreign vine? Although you wash yourself with lye and use much soap, the stain of your iniquity is before me, declares Lord Yahweh. How can you say, I am not defiled? I have not walked after the Baals. Look at your way in the valley. Know what you have done. You are a swift young camel entangling her ways, a wild donkey accustomed to the wilderness that sniffs the wind in her passion. In the time of her heat, who can turn her away? And all who seek her will not become weary. In her month, they will find her. Keep your feet from being barefoot and your throat from thirst. But you said, it is hopeless. No, for I have loved strangers, and after them I will walk. As the thief is shamed when he is found, so the house of Israel is shamed. They, their kings, their princes, and their priests, and their prophets, who say to a tree, you are my father, and to a stone, you gave me birth. For they have turned their back to me, and not their face. But in the time when their evil comes, they will say, arise and save us. Where are your gods which you made for yourself? Let them arise if they can save you. In the time when your evil comes, for according to the number of your cities are your gods, O Judah. Why do you contend with me? You have all transgressed against me, declares Yahweh. In vain I have struck your sons. They have received no discipline. Your sword has devoured your prophets like a destroying lion. O generation, behold the word of Yahweh. Have I been a wilderness to Israel, or a land of thick darkness? Why do my people say, we are free to roam? We will no longer come to you. Can a virgin forget her ornaments, or a bride her attire? Yet my people have forgotten me days without number. How well you prepare your way to seek love. Therefore, even the wicked women you have taught your ways. Also, on your skirt is found the lifeblood of the innocent needy. You did not find them breaking in, but in spite of these things, yet you said, I am innocent. Surely his anger is turned away from me. Behold, I will enter into judgment with you, because you say, I have not sinned. Why do you despise him so much in changing your way? Also, you will be put to shame by Egypt, as you were put to shame by Assyria. From this place also you will go out, with your hands on your head, for Yahweh has rejected those in whom you trust. and you will not succeed with them. Now, Matthew chapter 16. And the Pharisees and Sadducees, the two ruling classes of the people, they're basically the two groups of Jewish scholars who were most prevalent in that time. The Pharisees believed in everything. They believed in angels and miracles and all of these things from God, which any good student of Scripture would. The Sadducees, however, they don't agree that there are miracles. They don't believe in angels, really. Maybe there's a messenger of God from time to time, but it's certainly not an angel as described in Scripture. We've all met these people. And also, they do not believe in an afterlife. To them, death is just turning off a TV. That's it. It's gone. Nothing left. There's no life left in those images. They're just gone. That's why they're so very sad. You see? Sad, you see. Anyway, so they came testing him and asked him to show them a sign from heaven. But he replied to them, when it is evening, you say, it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, there will be a storm today, for the sky is red and threatening. Do you know how to discern the appearance of the sky, but cannot discern the signs of the times? An evil and adulterous generation eagerly seeks for a sign, and a sign will not be given to it, except the sign of Jonah. And he left them and went away. And coming to the other side of the sea, the disciples had forgotten to bring bread, and Jesus said to them, watch out and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Now they began to discuss among themselves, saying, he said that because we did not bring any bread. But Jesus, aware of this, said, you men of little faith, why do you discuss among yourselves that you have no bread? Do you not yet understand or remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000? And how many baskets full you picked up? Or the 7 loaves for the 4,000? And how many large baskets full you picked up? How is it that you do not understand that I did not speak to you concerning bread, but beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees? Then they understood that he did not say to beware the leaven of the bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Now, when Jesus came into the midst of the district of Caesarea Philippi, he was asking his disciples, saying, who do the people say that the Son of Man is? And they said, well, some say John the Baptist, and others Elijah, but still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. And he said to them, but who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter answered and said, you are the Christ, which is again a messianic title, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered and said to him, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, Simon son of Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. We have the same thing in us as Christians. We have the Holy Spirit living within us, appointed by God the Father, who has chosen us he has elected us for salvation, and he has placed within us his Spirit to regenerate our hearts and minds, to align our thoughts to agree with his thoughts, and our desires to align with his desires. And I say to you that you are Peter, which means small rock, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overpower it. Now, what rock is he speaking of? Is he talking about Peter? He said he's a rock, and therefore upon Peter, and he's, we're dedicating him now as the Pope of the... No. Upon the confession that Jesus is the Messiah, the Mashiach, the Christ, the Son of David, the one sent from God, promised in the Proto-Evangelion in Genesis chapter 3. This is the promised one that they've been waiting for since the very beginning. That is the spoken promise, so the spoken confession of who Jesus is. Upon that rock, Jesus will build his church, and the gates of Hades will not overpower it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall have been, past tense, already bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall have been, past tense, already loosed in heaven. Then he warned the disciples that they should tell no one that he was the Christ. Again, why? Because if they knew he was the Christ, he couldn't do anything, because people would throng around him everywhere he went. Now, what is this about these keys? Let's read the note. There's a lot of notes in this section, so I strongly recommend reading them. Let me find it here. It's hard because each of these sections kind of scroll past where we were. So I'm going to bring this one up first, so you can see those notes. And then I'll bring the one up over here so you can read these notes. Because I'm already scrolling through the ESV Study Bible, we'll read these notes. The keys of the kingdom of heaven. Peter is given the authority to admit entrance into the kingdom through the preaching of the gospel, an authority that is subsequently granted to all those who are called to proclaim the gospel, which is whom? Christians. And, well, we'll go through the note here and then we'll talk about it. Oh, this is the one that talks about it. I don't have to. So note the contrast between the scribes and Pharisees, who shut the kingdom in people's faces, neither entering themselves nor allowing others to enter. This is referenced in Matthew 23, verse 13. In Acts, Peter is the apostle who first preaches the message of the kingdom to the Jews at Pentecost. What's it focused on? The confession that Jesus is the Christ. This is in Acts 2. And also to the Samaritans. Again, what's the confession? That Jesus is the Christ. In Acts 8, and to the Gentiles in Acts 10, that Jesus is the Christ of God. Now, the whatever you bind, whatever you loose, Peter also has the authority to exercise discipline concerning right and wrong conduct for those in the kingdom. An authority that is not exclusive to Peter, but is extended to the church as a whole. In Matthew 18:18, which we're going to read in 2 days, Jesus delegates authority to human elders in the church who are called to govern his church on earth under his ultimate authority through the application of his word. Picking back up in verse 21 here. From that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed and be raised up on the third day. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, God forbid it, Lord. This shall never happen to you. But he turned aside and said to Peter, again, remember, people think he's the Pope. Jesus, God in the flesh, is telling him, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. For you are not setting your mind on God's interest, but on man's. What is this again? He's not focused on the suffering servant, statements about who the Messiah was going to be, but the conquering king. Verse 24. Then Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone wishes to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. We've talked about that before, the horrifying reality of taking up your cross. Verse 25, for whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and will then repay each one according to his deeds. Truly, I say to you, There are some of those who are standing here today. Rather, there are some of those who are standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. And as always comes right after that section, tomorrow begins 6 days later in the story of the Transfiguration. Maybe those are the same things. Maybe there's notes right here, which you could read right above me to kind of go over it. But that's all for today. That's all the text and all of the notes. God willing, we'll be back tomorrow. Behold, the word of the Lord.